Good afternoon. I, Swati Priya, journalist at FairGaze. We are thrilled to welcome a truly inspiring figure for today's interview, a visionary leader and dedicated advocate for education and empowerment, the founder of DEVI Sanstha, India, and the Council for Global Education, USA. We welcome Dr. Sunita Gandhi for the interview. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Swati. It's awesome to be here with you.
Yeah. So, what inspired you to transition from working at the World Bank to founding DEVI Sanstha and the Council for Global Education?
Okay, so there are lots of factors, but in particular, I had a desire to serve the needs of children above and beyond everything else. So at the World Bank, I was working with the governments, and it was good. I mean, we could influence through funding developing countries. It had its own charm. I traveled to many countries. I work with the governments on policy, so education policy, and that's a really important angle as well as we, think of ourselves making a difference in education. But I wanted to be in the trenches. I really wanted to work with the children, in the classrooms, with the teachers, with the parents, with the administration, and to research what works in education. So the Council for Global Education was set up in the US with the view to re-explore what should be the founding principles of education as we are in the 21st century. So here there were 4 building blocks: universal values, global understanding, excellence in all things, and service to humanity. So that framework has been used and is being used by a number of schools, including our own family-run school. So I want to also share that my family runs here in Lucknow. The biggest school in the world is called City Montessori School. And so I came back and I thought I really want to work, of course, with that school, but also for the underprivileged children. So I started doing a lot of research. Children are children. It doesn't matter whether they're in the slums of Lucknow or they're in our schools where they can afford to pay a fee. But when we look at children who are not having anything at all, you become more innovative. So I think what we learned from working with those children is now helping our private schools also in a big way. So that was the research ground on which we could build a lot of really good possibilities for children. So that's that. And then DEVI Sanstha was really an outcome of all this effort, because DEVI stands for Dignity, Education, Vision International. So the idea that dignity is very important and education is very important. So how do we marry the two and how do we go forth so we make world citizens?
I want to know, could you share a few the most significant innovations that you believe have the power to transform education globally?
So when we talk about education, see, it has been in its old molds forever. So we're talking about, if you look at the classrooms are arranged with the teacher at the head, more or less stuck to the board, even if the board is now an interactive whiteboard, right? The transaction of learning is primarily from the teacher to the taught, and is primarily rote, and is primarily verbal. And all of these things don't really work very well. But we are doing this for the vast majority of children. There are schools that are not doing it that way. There are schools who are doing in much better ways. But I still feel we are playing to the old tunes in education, the old rhythms in education. And we need to think of a brand new tune. So what would that look like? And what would that how would it reflect in terms of the kinds of outcomes that we want to see in our children? So first and foremost, we think, okay, school is there, it has to produce good academics. So there the question would be, are all children excelling? And obviously they're not. Maybe you get 15%, 20% of the children getting above 80% marks, or maybe 30, 40, 50%. But still you have maybe 10, 20, 30% who are struggling. So when we talk about marks, marks are also limiting academics. They're not really showing you the true potential of the child. But if you were to consider that as somewhat of a gauge for success, then we still have some 20, 30% of the children who are not excelling, who are not doing so well. And that's a lot of humanity. So obviously what I want to share is that there's a lot of question marks around the way we teach and what we teach. What we teach, of course, is still, okay, we need to prepare them for mathematics. That's totally understandable and so forth. But the transaction of learning, how we transact learning, is where the innovation has to be the greatest. Most of it is about teacher to the taught. I teach, you learn. And mostly it is on the board or verbally. And we know the children don't learn verbally. So what are those new directions that education can take so that it can be transformed, right? That's the real question.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? So basically, we're looking at transformation in terms of process. Here, our research has shown that when children work in pairs, that they learn more.
Yeah.
So we've done the research, we mainstreamed the whole process of learning. The other thing is that how do we make that happen? How do children learn? Is it 10% of the time? Like, there are lots of constructivist theories like think, pair, share. So there is, obviously a lot of schools do that. They already do think, pair, share. They do a lot of group work. They do maybe project-based learning. They do maybe flipped learning. There's a lot of key buzzwords out there. And a lot of schools are beginning to do those. And those are good. They're all very good, great new directions. But the impact on learning, as in it may be more joyful, maybe sometimes, but what is the net impact on improvement of learning is not clear. There's no research that's showing, if you do project-based learning, now your results are going to be better. We know it's broader. We know it's good that they work with each other. We know there are a number of other skills that they develop. But if you look at academics as the main outcome, we don't see that necessarily some of these great ideas are working out. But what we have been able to establish, and this is where the difference is so profound, we've been able to establish that when we do paired learning as opposed to group learning, and when we not just do paired learning, like teachers saying, everybody now do this in this, in your pairs, it's not like that. It's about empowering children so that they can learn on their own and by themselves. Now that nobody will ever believe it's possible. That how can my little ones, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, maybe older kids can they learn all day long? And all day long literally is what I mean, with each other. And so that transformation has to be seen before it's believed. A lot of people will not believe it, but that's transformative. And not just transformative because of academics, and we've seen better academic results, like multiples better. We are also seeing that one of the goals of education is to make children empathetic human beings, to develop in them compassion, kindness, respect, responsibility, and so forth. So Michael Fullan, he had come up with this theory of 4 C's that he calls, or 6 C's also people refer to them. So these are collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and these are all very profound. So how do we develop those? In a regular, normal education system, these things are not being developed because the teacher's talking from the front. Where's the room for any kind of collaboration? Maybe it's 10% of the time, maybe it's 20% of the time, but the vast majority of the time, children are not collaborating. They're not communicating, they're just listening, all day long. They're not doing critical thinking as much as they could and should. They're doing some questions, yeah, fine, but critical thinking would also mean that they're making questions for each other, that they're able to raise the profile and the standard of learning and make better quality questions. Creativity, we don't really do much creative work, maybe an art period here or there or a music period, but when we talk about creativity, is in every aspect of life, every aspect of learning, and that's not happening. So when you look at the new process of paired learning, what's happening is all these 4 things are becoming mainstreamed because they're working with each other. They're collaborating as all day long, they're working with each other. But how do they work becomes a second issue. But the fact that they can work, let me for sure say that yes, they can work, and they can work beautifully, even grade 1 children, even kindergarten children and younger children. We've done this at our schools, and we found the results to be multiples of times better than 10% better or 15% better. Even those 10%, 15% better results don't get seen year on year. So you go to a school and say, okay, next year Or last year, were your results better by 10 or 15% than the previous year? They'll say no. They'll mostly say it's the same, it's similar, it's almost the same. Though we have done these three things new, it has not necessarily reflected in better results. So we are saying, look, there is better results. And in addition to that, there is holistic education. That means that the children are getting to have these 4 skills. And further, they're also developing what we would want to see: citizenship and character, which are really, really important traits. You don't develop character in isolation. You develop it in context of working with somebody, because things go wrong, and then you have to negotiate, you have to talk, you have to sort things out. So then it has been a perennial issue that how you develop these 6 C's, to which we have added 2 more: connectedness and climate consciousness. So these 8 C's, how do we develop these 8 C's in the regular classroom, in the way it is conducted normally? It's not possible. So that's why the process has to change, how the children work with each other. Then we are talking about the idea of how we scaffold learning, and that's a transformative idea as well. Like normally we scaffold learning in a certain pace, in a certain way. So for example, you look at grades 1 through 5 and you'll find a lot of repetition. Computer science, this is a mouse, this is a CPU, this is that. A lot of rote learning, a lot of they do practical understanding, and more so now, but you're wasting an awful lot of time. Look at Kriya, look at, for example, Visheshan, all these things that we learn. So the same thing is taught over a number of years, and the upgradation is not that much. If you think of composition, kids of grade 1 are writing my birthday party, kids of grade 5 writing about my birthday party, and there's not that much of a difference in terms of quality. Yes, there's some, obviously, but we're not making them writers. So there's a lot of thinking that we need to do as to how to scaffold learning, and in what way can we enable the children to learn on their own, and a lot more than they've done in the past, and some real skills that are so necessary, like the ability to write a letter. We have these graduates from master's programs. They don't know how to write a letter. They don't know how to do an Excel, or quickly let me put it in Excel. They don't have the practical skills. So these practical skills, so scaffolding of learning, meaning how you structure it so that children can engage with it over the years. The content that it goes into a sort of some kind of a DNA spiral. So it goes from, and kids can meander through that. Some kids can go, in something like mathematics they love, for example. If they do, they can do a lot more in mathematics. In English, they're struggling. They can do a lot more of, foundational work in literacy. So we have to think of the third thing, which is organization of learning. How do we organize learning within this space, school time, and over the year? We take a very narrow view of learning. We take it from like a child entering grade at age 3 and entering this tunnel of learning and coming out at the other end as a 17, 18-year-old. So we've got these 14 years in the schooling system. And we don't need that year-on-year and half-yearly to annual, exam-to-exam learning cycle. We need to see these 14 years. We can do so much more with that. So that is a structural issue. So there are lots of levels at which we have to gauge our efforts. And that may be the more important 90%.
And what is the most valuable lesson you have learned on the journey that you would like to share with others?
Oh, in my educational journey.
Yeah, you can say that educational and career, both of them. What is the lesson you can share with us?
I think when we look at education, we need to be aware of things that we were not aware of earlier. For example, that belief in the children that they're capable of learning by themselves, that they can learn without us teaching them. Those are some of the greatest beliefs that I've had on my journey. I did not know that a child of 4 years of age, a child meaning children of 4 years of age, majority of them can read a newspaper at age 4. I had no belief in that. I would not have believed it. Anybody would tell me, I'd say, no, that's not possible. but it is possible. And this is where the research comes in. We've done this cognitive way of teaching rather than rote way of teaching. And it's so fascinating. And these kids have figured out a way to learn by themselves, because it's all based on cognition. You cognize, you know something, and on that you build the next thing, and on that you build the next thing. And they figured out how to do this through a new system. So we're calling this new system Alpha, Accelerating Learning for All. ALFA, Alpha. So Alpha is really moving mountains, and it's changing my belief in the children, and not just my belief of all the teachers who are now believing in this, who are implementing Alpha. So we've got right now City Montessori School, of course, my family run school that's running it, and a few other schools. We have 14,500 children who are in this research phase, and these kids are doing so much better than we'd ever believed. And our teachers all transforming. We have some 450 teachers who are teaching these kids, and they are in a different space now. And also, all these years we thought, oh, education means that you're always struggling to finish the syllabus. There's too much syllabus. Even if you cut the syllabus by a third, which CBSE board has done, we're always feeling, oh, there's too much syllabus. And we somehow gear towards the end, and we rush near an exam. And then we rush through the reporting, we rush through making the report cards. We're always in a rush, and what we're saying is, look, relax. These kids can do a lot more in a lot less time. The way we're teaching is wrong. The way we're scaffolding is wrong. The way we're organizing learning is wrong. Try this alternative and you will see magic. And these kids and teachers, everybody can feel their space. So teachers are now believing in the children and their capacity to learn by themselves. They are scaffolding learning differently. They are, demonstrating things rather than teaching things. They're more like galvanizers, meaning, they're energizing the class into action and winding that clock, and the kids get going. And once the kids get going, there's no stopping them. It's just awesome. So that belief thing is very important, and belief, of course, in the pedagogy also. So our pedagogy, I don't think many teachers will say, oh, we believe in this pedagogy, right? Because so many kids don't thrive in that, the way of learning at the moment. So many children are under pressure. They're under tremendous anxiety because they're not getting the marks that they need to succeed. And the parents are saying, oh, you haven't got so many marks. How come you got 1 mark less and so got 2 marks more? And things like that, which are putting a lot of stress on children. But what we've shared with you, that all these kids can do 2 grades higher. Then will you test them on the grade level? If you did test them on the grade level, how will they do? Obviously, they'll do far better. Yeah. In fact, not just far better, they'll be above grade level. And that's what Alpha is making possible. All the kids are above grade level. Yeah. So the teachers who have embraced Alpha is very new. Just came up with it in 2022, post-COVID.
Yeah,
so
I got to know from you only. Like, I am aware of that word, but what is the meaning behind and what is the process behind, I got to know from you only.
So now we have, we started with 20 schools in the government sector.
Okay.
And today we have MOUs for 17,000 schools. So that's a rapid pace with which it's growing. And the reason is that children are enjoying, the teachers are enjoying, and the results are far better. Because the parent only pays you for results as a school.
Yeah.
They don't pay you because they're having a good time. They actually want to see their children stressed out a bit.
Yeah.
They're actually doing a lot of writing work. They're doing whatever, And these kids are doing it joyfully. That's the only difference. And they're all above grade level. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're not stopping at grade level. So they can go beyond grade level.
Yeah. That will make the change in the future.
Obviously, because these kids are ready. They want to do. They are so excited to do the next. We say, no, slow down. You got to do only what I've told you. That's where the problem comes. Yeah.
And you have worked across the global and studied at the prestigious institute like Cambridge University. How have these diverse experiences shaped your understanding of education, especially in the context of developing nation like India?
So you see, everything is about opportunity.
Yeah.
So there's so many millions of children who don't have opportunity. There are millions of children who have opportunity but don't grasp it and don't go for it.
Yeah.
And they settle to lower standards, if you like. So going to Cambridge is not the only solution, or some big university in the West. You can go anywhere. But that aspiration to do well must be every child's reality. They should all want to do well. And that aspiration comes from education systems being more ambitious for their children, not just marks on a sheet. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Being ambitious, as in the system acknowledging that these kids are so much more capable, being able to draw that out. And therefore, these kids can do a lot more. My father was a big influence in my life. And he and my mother both. My mother is a psychologist. And they both started this big school that is the biggest. It's not just one of the biggest, it's the biggest school in the world. So check out Guinness World of Records and ask, which is the biggest school in the world, and you'll come up with City Montessori School.
For sure.
So basically, big is not the key thing. The key thing is that the aspiration that you build in the hearts of the children, that they can do anything that they set their heart to. And that should be a reality. So if the teachers endorsing constantly, they're saying, oh, tum nahi kar paoge, you can do this, and they're constantly saying, tumhare to marks kam aaye. You are reducing these kids and their future potential. So when I got very low marks, my father would say, so what? I know, next time you'll improve it. And that's a very good question. Are you going to do better the next time? That's the key question, not what marks you got. Can you do a little bit better next time? So the child thinks, oh yes, I think I can. This is what I'll do, 1, 2, 3, and I'll do better. So because they were educators, they were able to think of things differently. And I think that ambition was there in me, that I want to do things, but I kept seeing the marks as like, okay, I'm only in process. I didn't think of them as ultimate decision makers for my life. So I got very poor marks when I did my A-levels, equivalent. No, I'm talking about not A-levels. When I did my 10th grade here in India, which was through the ICSE board. I did my 10th grade. And the subject I studied the most was history. I was naturally good at physics and mathematics, but history, any subjects that required a lot of memorization, I was terrible at. So I put all my time into history because I felt my average will come down if I don't. And I got the worst mark even after that in history. I got 46% in history. Now, my father still uses to say, "Mere honhar bacche." Now, this is critical. Yeah. So even at 46%, he would say and reinforce me that I am capable of the highest success. This is so powerful. And I think parents need to do that. And teachers even more so need to do that. They see possibility. They see a tree that is, flourishing, it's fruitful tree, a big tree, a mighty tree in that little child, even if it's not getting to be seen as a big mighty tree when they're young and little. So I had all that in me, and I felt that those words were the part that were healing and that were helping me to grow. So when I went to England, and I was a very poor student in the sense academically also poor, but financially also very poor, because at that time we didn't have any resources. And so I took up odd jobs. I worked at a number of places, including Marks and Spencer's, by the way. And then I managed to have a teacher who really supported me, Paul Anning. And he said to me, the very first day, he says, okay, here's the physics thing I've just explained. Can Sunita please try to give an answer? And I gave the answer, and it was correct. Now, that was a building point of my confidence that I can do. And he kept saying, you can. So I got my father and mother, I got this teacher. And I think those are the supports I needed. So when I finished my A-levels, I got straight A's. I got A stars, which meant that I could get into very good university. I applied for physics. I did my undergraduate at Imperial College, which is the best for physics in the country and one of the top in the world for physics, right? So all the Nobel laureates, many of them are from Imperial College, London University. After that, I got into Cambridge with full scholarship. So, how did a 46%er make it to Cambridge with full scholarship? So therein lies a secret for all children, I think. All kids can do it. And we need to make them believe. And I think that belief thing is so critical. Believing in their potential, but building the belief in them that marks are secondary. I know you can. And that faith, like a mother would have in their child or father would have in their child, teacher having their faith in all her children, and not relative distinctions and relative comparisons that look so and so is better. Mr. Sharma's daughter just got so many marks, and how come you didn't get so many marks? This kind of craziness, I think, is holding back children's potential. It's actually stopping them from growing. Hope for all of us.
Yeah, hope for all of us.
Yes. Can you imagine if I had in my heart that I'm a 46 percenter, right? I would have never tried. I said, but I don't think so, because no child thinks that. We make them think that you're not good enough. You are good enough. And this is the grit and the determination that we need to build far more than academic excellence.
Yeah.
Forgetting that, people who make it in life, people who are doing really big in any whichever way, were not toppers in their classes. Very often they were people who didn't make it through university.
They are showing that marks does not decide what you are and what you want to be and where you will be. So marks doesn't matter. You just have to focus what you want to do and just go with the flow.
Absolutely. So much in agreement with that. And there's lots of evidence. I totally agree. Yeah.
And lastly, what were the challenges you faced when founding DEVI Sansthan, and how did you overcome them to create the transformative educational program it offers today?
Okay, so that's another thing that I want to always look at, is what's possible rather than what's not possible. So there are challenges in everything we do. There are like umpteen challenges. For my Cambridge interview, I had challenge from another Indian student who had applied for the same scholarship. So, there are always challenges, but how do you handle those challenges, and how do you overcome them? I think that's probably the more important, determiner of success. I feel that a lot of the issues that I'm facing in the transformation is lack of principals, teachers, policymakers believing in children's potential. Their lack of ability to move from past ways of thinking and limitations in their own mindsets. They're more or less gatekeepers often to the old and the established. And so they stand for change, but they want change which is very minor. Maybe, okay, this year we're going to have a nice English program from so and so place, right? But it's not about that. Education is about transformation, and we need to transform it. So the challenge is the mindsets that I face. Challenge is the lack of understanding possibilities, the lack of looking at evidence. Even if you give them evidence, they go with their hunch. And hunches are fine. We have our hunches. They land us in good places, I'm sure. But what we need to have also is evidence. If we say, oh, I'm going to do this program. I meet so many policymakers. They say, I know the exact solution for the problem. I'm working with FLN, Foundational Literacy and Numeracy of the children in government schools primarily. So, and our own schools. So I go there, and I'm offering these, by the way, to every school in the country. If they want to take this alpha program, they're welcome. But what I'm trying to say is that lack of belief doesn't allow them to take the next step. And the policymakers in particular, I've met who are IAS officers who will say that, I know what to do. I don't need anybody. By this December, all my children will be literate and numerate. Or by next March, they'll be all literate and numerate. Now, a problem that has been outstanding problem for years and decades. Our children do not know how to read, write, and do basic arithmetic, for example, even before the COVID. It was not like, before the COVID, things were really rosy. Children sitting in grade 4 in many schools, including our own, are not able to read newspaper. How come a 4-year-old can read a newspaper? So there is a crisis of education that we are facing, and that is a challenge. A crisis with mindsets that are stopping the growth. Everything else is possible.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you so much. And we love to have you here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So lovely to interact with you. You're such a lovely, lovely presence. Thank you so much indeed for being there.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.